Hello, everybody. This is Mindenségit Podcast. We are here on the World Adaptation Forum of 2025, and I have the pleasure of sitting here with András Gelencsér. András is Rector Emeritus of the University of Pannonia. He's an air chemist, professor, corresponding member of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, former rector of the University of Pannonia, an internationally renowned researcher on the links between air pollution and climate change. Was I good?
Yes.
Great. I'm very happy to talk to you again. And what I would like to ask of you is, please tell me, if you would have to choose one single thing from all the dangers and challenges we are facing as a human civilization altogether, what would be the one you'd say is the most important for us to address right now?
You mean the root causes of the global crisis or the consequences? Because they are different.
Yeah.
The root cause of all problems of humanity is over-consumerism, overpopulation and consumer society, or in short, capitalism in its present form. It's the ultimate cause for all the problems that we face today. As a consequence, we have many. We have resource crisis ahead of us. We have social inequalities. We have climate change and a number of other biodiversity loss and a number of others.
What do you think is, I know it's hard to choose because the list is great and colorful, but what is, you think, the most urgent thing to do at this moment?
I guess that we should reduce our consumption or footprint as soon as we can and to the extent that is possible while maintaining the society operational in operation.
Mm-hmm. But by nature, capitalism won't allow us to do this, will it?
No.
No. So should we change from capitalism?
It's very difficult because there were alternatives to capitalism, but they all failed. Mm-hmm. And today there is no better model than capitalism, but we know that it is possibly the worst regime that humanity ever put together, which is very hard to say.
You mentioned overpopulation and overconsumption, but if we look at the Seneca model, then it kind of tells us whatever the hell we do or continue doing, or if we change, if we could, we would still get the same result, which will be the decreasing of population, thereby the decreasing of production, consumption, and eventually, some decades or centuries later, the decrease of pollution. So we always talk about, or we mostly talk about overpopulation and such, but if the Seneca model turns out to be true, which I guess it will, then we will have the exact opposite problem soon. So this leaves me confused because I don't know anymore which team I should root for. Should I wish that we continue to multiply, or should we put effort, to somehow slow down our multiplication? So what the hell should we do? It's so confusing. It seems that there is no good way anymore.
Yes, but that's not our decision at all, because demography is a rock hard science, and it has rules, and people obey the rules. So there is no way to significantly change the course of the growth of population, and the same is with consumerism. It is on a kind of increasing trend, and it's very difficult to change because it has its inherent properties of growth. So it's I think that's it's beyond our reach to change the course of the history, to change the course of population growth or consumption, because they are just obeying kind of rules of nature, laws of nature.
Yeah, it's not a wonder that this year's forum under title is called Beyond Mitigation. Still, it is, if there's one thing we can do, maybe, I'm not sure, but I just hope, to try things. Because right now we're thinking with the minds of the person that is living in this world, in this system, and I completely accept and I agree with you when you say that we cannot change these rules. We have to obey them because that's how we're living. But if humans could make a step, an evolutionary step inside themselves, and just as it happened with technological evolution in the last 100 years, the development of technology surpassed the development of the last 200,000 years. And why couldn't we do the same thing with spiritual and mental evolution? Why couldn't we shift paradigm with the thing we do have effect on, which is ourselves? Do you think this is still impossible?
Yes, I think so, because I think humanity got addicted to well-being and to luxury, and it's very difficult to abandon the way of living that we get used to. And this is especially harsh for the young generation who never experienced life outside this very high technological world that we live today. So it's I think it would cause mental problems to cope with the fact that these technological miracles are no longer available, and they have to do things offline. That would be probably catastrophic for most people, for most young people living in cities alone, in isolation, having no connection to their fellows. So that's a problem, I guess, for humanity to be developing in this direction.
But do you think humanity has a vision at all? Like, is there any direction we're striving to go towards, or are we just living always for the moment and just trying to get the most out of the moment we can?
No, I don't think that we are living for the moment, because that would be a good thing to live for a moment. Then you would go out to the nature and just to lie on your back and to just watching the clouds passing by. That would be living for the moment. But you live for the future, which do not exist. So you just work hard in order to get something in the future. You take loans to buy something, and to so that's the way most people live. They do not live for the moment. They live for the future, which and they do a lot of things that they do not like in order to be better off for the future. So that's I think that's how people, modern civilized people are living. That was not the case for the past. So people living for the today, for the day, and they enjoyed life when they lived, and they didn't care for a very long for their future just for the immediate
Yeah.
future
Yeah.
coming.
But do you think if there would be a person with such capabilities and authority, like what Donald Trump has, or Vladimir Putin has, or people whose names we probably don't even know have, do you think if, for the first time in human history, such a very, very strong person would use this authority for the good, do you think something could change?
No, they they wouldn't get to this position if they did so. So that's the very simple thing. They have to promise for their electors everything, and when they didn't get what he promises to him, then to them, then he will be overthrown. So that's not possible for anybody to change the course of history, or to change the fundamental working principles of capitalism, I guess, and nor can CEOs do that, because if they do, then they are fired, simply because the company would not be profitable, so they will be removed
Yeah.
for a position very quickly.
You know, to me, it seems so strange in a very weird way that it seems like our future is doomed because of some actually very base and very simple monetary and political rules that are set. It is a mechanism which is like a whirlpool. It never wants to stop, and it only stays alive if it's growing. But the very definition of it, it's inherently gonna die and destroy the organism it's living in. So it is like, it's a death virus. It seems like a death virus. And to me, it seems so weird that we have this planet here, the only place in the universe we know about, and as far as we know, where life exists as we know it.
Yes.
And this place is going to be doomed because of fucking politics and money.
Yes, exactly.
You know, I believe that if more people would understand this in the world, then this wouldn't be so easy to implement.
Yes, but they do their best to camouflage the truth from the public.
Yeah.
So they just have these buzzwords all around in terms of sustainability, like zero emission or renewable energy sources, or all these bullshit are just spoken out and just they help keep this whole system running. Actually, that we are living in really a post-truth world when even facts and very obvious and very trivial things do not matter. Just communication and propaganda which rule the world, actually.
Can you help us and the viewers and the listeners out a little bit? Because most people have actually good intentions, and they would like to, save on energy. They would like to do their little part. And when they see green energy, zero emission, we immediately think, all right, that's good. If I'm doing that, I'm gonna be doing good, which is very rarely true, actually. So what could you advise, what kind of an advice could you give? How can we spot what's a lie and what's greenwashing and what is real something real we can do?
I think that's very simple, because the things that I'm usually talking about are very simple things. They do not require science or high science. It's just elementary school subjects are enough to understand the basics of how the world actually works. So people should use their brain and should think of the things that as they are, and not as politicians suggest them they look like. So that's very simple. Just we should be more educated. We should be more kind of critical thinkers, and we should refuse propaganda in all forms, not only political propaganda, but also this green propaganda, which suggests that you mentioned that you can do this and this, and that everything will be fine, and then we live forever, which is simply not true.
Could you give us an example how to distinguish propaganda from real information in such a subject? I mean, there's many of us who would like to be closer to the truth. We would like to know more, but I feel like most people who have the good ambitions, they fail because they didn't yet learn how to distinguish propaganda from information, because they just don't believe that this size and this amazing rate of lies do exist as official outputs. I think they struggle believing that this is really not true, what I'm reading right there in the New York Times or whatever. So could you give us an example what's propaganda and how to find out that it is? It could be any simple example.
Yeah, but there are many examples of that. Like all this green transition is a kind of an illusion. I wouldn't say it lie, because it's not yet happened, but it is an illusion which persists, or for example, to stop climate global warming under 1.5 degrees, which we already surpassed, and it is in the rearview mirror already, but we still go for that target. So it's they just persist until the very end with all these bullshits and buzzwords that they want people to believe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you think if it would be a good thing to do once you find, as any person, as average person, regular person, if you go on social media and I see an article from the Washington Post or whatever, whichever medium, and it says that if Germany builds 15,000 more units of solar panels, then it's going to use renewable energy, 50% of the year. I'm just saying something. Then if I see this and I just don't look around but accept this as truth, then I might be misled. But if I just do a little research on parts of this information, then maybe then I have a chance to find out if I've been misled. Or if you see some article or an information somewhere and you get the suspicion or just want to check whether it's true, how do you go about it? What do you do?
Well, it's very difficult. There are many papers or many news around that suggest that everything is all right and things are already solved and technology is already in place. We are just have to implement this simply, but that's not true. So, for example, you mentioned this Germany with solar energy. In Germany, the average rate of solar energy efficiency is like 11%. So that's the nominal capacity of solar panels in Germany is utilized in 11%. It's not 50%, and it's the same in the whole of Europe. So it's a very difficult. You already see negative prices for electricity during the daytime when all these solar panels are producing, but when you return back to your home and you just plug in your electric vehicles, then it for sure the electrons going into your vehicle is not from the solar panels. They are from a gas station, a gas plant, or a power plant, or a nuclear power plant, but certainly not from solar panel, because sun is not shining in the evening. That's very simple. That do not require science or very complicated thinking. That's very simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe we could say that whatever you see out there in the news, or whatever people tell you, they are telling you, maybe you should always second guess that, at the very least.
Yeah, just use your brain and be critical to the news, because news are really not reliable information source anymore, especially in the age of fake artificial intelligence and all these fake news. Even videos or photos or recordings can be manipulated. So that's very difficult to believe in anything.
Yeah.
Just what is in your brain, actually.
Yeah. Thank you, András. Just one last short question. What are you hoping this year's conference will bring by to the audience, and what are your hopes for this event?
Well, I see the list of participants and the list of speakers at this conference, and I am very much impressed with seeing names of famous Hungarian scientists who really lined up and try to make their point. So that would be very exciting, I think, and thought-provoking. I hope.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. It's an honor always to talk to you. Thank you.
Yeah.